Hello. Hello, welcome to our show. Today is Friday, October the 20th, 2023. My name is Sasa K. I'm here to interview and have a discussion with Dr. Jean-Marie Vianney Higiro. I will just introduce my guest in a second, but I want to welcome our viewers who are watching live from wherever you're watching. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Vianney Higiro, may I just call you Dr. Higiro? Is that all right? To just cut it short?
No, that's fine.
Okay, welcome. He is a professor of communication in the Department of Communication, Media and Arts at the University of Western New England in the United States. He's also a former CEO of at Rwanda Broadcasting Agency, known as Orinfor at the time. He was in that position through July 1993 to April 1994, before he served in the capacity of the chief in charge of studies and programs service in Orinfor. He's also the first senior officer to manage and lead Orinfor while in an oppositional political party and not in the ruling party of MRND. And so today, together, we're just going to go through a couple subtopics on Rwandan political freedom and Rwandan media, etc. So I'll give my guest time to introduce himself if there's anything else he needs to add. Welcome, Dr. Higiro.
Thank you. As you said, I am Jean-Marie Vianney Higiro. I am a professor of communication at Western New England University. I left Rwanda in 1994, April 9th, 1994. I fled to Nairobi through Burundi.
Oh, wow.
And I have been living in the United States since 1994. Of course, I went to graduate school in the United States and Canada.
I see. All right. Thank you for that. So we'll dig deep into our first topic. Our first topic for today we're speaking on the freedom of speech and freedom of the press, media in Rwanda. So Dr. Higiro, my first question is, how do you see it currently compared to the states? How do you see the state of freedom of speech and freedom of the press compared to the state at the same time in your era when you were working in Orinfor in the 90s?
When I was director of Orinfor, the media, private media, were free. In 1991, June 1991, there was a new constitution that allowed multi-party democracy. And from that time onwards, harassment of journalists stopped, jailing journalists, imprisoning journalists, killing journalists stopped. So from June 1991 up to the downing of the plane carrying the president of Rwanda and Burundi, journalists were operating unimpeded. It is not the case now. Today, Rwanda is ruled by a government that emerged from a rebellion And that rebellion put into place, after taking power, put into place an authoritarian regime or a dictatorial regime. That dictatorial regime does not tolerate democracy. It does not tolerate the freedom of speech, the freedom of press, of the press. It violates human rights. It does not accept a strong civil society. That government has infiltrated the civil society that existed before it took over power. So human rights organizations, the media, the churches, you name it, are run by RPF, Rwandan Patriotic Front activists.
Oh, you mentioned something at the beginning of the talk, that public versus private, and it's something I've never really thought about, but in Rwanda at the moment, there is no separation from public and private media. Another question I had is, what do you think the regime is so fearful of, the ruling party and the state organs, when they stifle any dissenting voice or crush any person challenging their official narrative and policy? What is the fear if they're legitimately in power? So I think I might have answered that for you, but I wanted to hear your point.
The Rwandan Patriotic Front and its president Paul Kagame do not have legitimacy. They took power by force. They rule by coercion. So there's no legitimacy. You know, there was a presidential election, I believe, in 2003.
Yes.
Two candidates were vying for that office: Faustin Twagiramungu, the former prime minister, and President Kagame. And Faustin Twagiramungu overwhelmingly defeated President Kagame. However, well, the election commission proclaimed President Kagame the winner. But people know that he did not win. Okay?
Yes.
Now, so he doesn't have legitimacy. The RPF doesn't have legitimacy. Its legitimacy is founded on the use of force. If people raise their voices, they are physically eliminated, or they have to run away, they have to flee the country. So people, Rwandan citizens cannot challenge the regime. There is no public space where Rwandans are allowed to debate social, political, and economic issues. And when you do not have that space, there are the political parties that exist there are the allies of the Rwandan Patriotic Front. There is no opposition there. And when you have, when there is no space for civil debate, what else do you have? That's a dictatorial regime.
Very true.
There are no free media.
You mentioned something that I've really not thought about, but you mentioned about how the RPF infiltrated the civilian, what did you call it? The civil society. Civil society. And civil society is such an important buffer, I think, in a society, and especially in a government state. So the moment that you remove it, you really do get to see a clear picture of a dictatorial regime in those cases. So thank you for that. My follow-up question is, if you had a chance to, advise for the change in a post RPF, in a post-Rwandan Patriotic Front regime environment, what would be your core priority or recommendation, especially in regards to freedom of speech and allowing for that space?
I believe what every human being aspires to is freedom. Freedom to be able to live one's life. And nowadays, the lives of people are controlled by the government. The freedom to be able to speak up your mind, the freedom to be able to own property, the freedom to be able to invest, the freedom to earn a living. That does not exist in Rwanda today. Everything is controlled by a tiny group of people headed by President Kagame. So, if we really need to live in a country where there is freedom, we need a civil society that is free, meaning that there is a space where debates may take place, where people can air their differences, where people can agree to disagree, where people can negotiate their differences. There is no such a place, such a space in Rwanda today.
And that is so interesting. You brought up so many points than just speaking. And you've made me realize that, yes, the freedom of speech, or the civil society, it doesn't just offer speaking. It really offers a space for society to come together and critical think through problems and create solutions that everyone would benefit from. Once you stifle that, really it almost gives the people no avenue to release their needs and desires. Since we're speaking of governance in Rwanda, and we spoke about how the government in Rwanda really now just uses state violence against the citizens. That's the relationship they now have with the public state organs and the population. How would you explain what seems like a trend to increase the oppressiveness in Rwanda and the wealth capture that the Rwandan elite has? They've captured the economic, political, and military wing of the entire country. How do you explain, other than simple grab of power, what could this benefit them?
The group in power is a tiny group. It has control over the economic resources. They have the land. People have lost their rights to the land. The land particularly in the northwest, in the eastern part of Rwanda, was transformed into ranches. Those ranches are owned by senior military or RPF officials.
Mm.
In other places, people have been ordered to practice monoculture. For example, you have
one crop.
You have people who are ordered to just grow potatoes or rice. Then when there are harvests, the harvests are taken over by RPF officials.
That's always sounded like sharecropping to me. Is it not the same thing? Sharecropping? Is it not the same thing that they're practicing, where they're renting land to the population and then the population has to bring the food to them?
That's about, yeah, that is really what it looks like.
Oh, okay.
Because the land is now owned by the state, right?
Yes.
And you have these associations, organizations called cooperatives that are run by the RPF. So, in other words, they are the ones who, those cooperatives, in fact, they are the extensions of a conglomerate called Crystal Ventures. And that conglomerate run the cooperatives. It runs the companies that build roads, do construction. All those companies that are involved in public transportation. So everything is controlled.
It's a very tight monopoly.
It's a tight monopoly, right?
Oh, yes.
So when you read the reports put out by the World Bank, they tell you, oh, the GDP in Rwanda has increased. It is now 8.5%. Or it is now 11 point something percent. But in fact, if you go to rural areas, there is only poverty. If you look at the education system, you have parents, you have kids who are not performing well after graduating from high school, or even when they finish high school, they are unable to go to university because education has become so expensive. Good education today is belongs to the tiny group that owns Rwanda. Rwanda is like a family business owned by President Kagame. Then you have people surrounding him who are also profiting off
him.
The economic structure set up by the Rwandan Patriotic Front after it took over.
I can't help but see similarities to feudalism. Like they're creating a hierarchy that very much resembles feudalism, where you have the king, the nobility, and then the peasantry. But what's funny in Rwandan historical terms, that already existed, that was already fought against. So to see RPF creating the same version through modern times is very, very strange, I would say.
In fact, the political structure consists of a pyramid, where you have at the top the king, who is now President Kagame.
Oh, yeah.
Under him, you have all those high-ranking military officers who came from Uganda and Congo and Burundi. Then underneath, you have the masses of made up of poor people. So that's the way it is. Now, where is democracy? There is no space for democracy, because if you introduce space for democracy, you have to destroy that pyramid.
Yes, that's very true. It's very true. But I think that I wonder, it's like, despite Rwanda's, massive human rights abuse records, they've been destabilizing neighboring countries. They are currently at war with DRC. Why does it seem like the Rwandan state keeps benefiting diplomatically? They still have diplomatic support. They still have financial and economic aid from all of these, multilateral actors through the international scene. And I often wonder myself, what do they give back to these organizations that they can turn a blind eye? Or I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Okay. First, there was a genocide in Rwanda. Okay. And it is called the genocide against Tutsi. That's how it is called there. But that's not what I call it. Now, that genocide has been sold to the rest of the world as the genocide of the Jews during World War II. So the world, after 1994, felt guilty for not intervening in Rwanda. So that is one. That's why the RPF kills people. It has a license to kill. No one is going to raise their voice to say this is wrong. Human Rights Watch has been trying, Amnesty International has been trying. However, in diplomatic circles, they stay, officials, Western officials stay silent. Why? Because of that genocide guilt. As I said, in Rwanda, it is called the genocide against Tutsi. Okay, so that is one. That's one reason. Now, the second reason, behind Rwanda, there are multinational companies. The companies that need the minerals of the DRC. The minerals, who is taking out the minerals over there, the DRC, it is Rwanda and also Uganda. There have been so many United Nations report on the illegal exploitation of the DRC. And those reports including a famous report called the mapping report. Those reports have been shelved. Why? Those multinational companies also use money not only to support Rwanda, but to support lobbyists in foreign countries. What do lobbyists do? Lobbyists go and polish the image of Rwanda. Rwanda is always presented as a victim. Okay, so as the victim, basically it has the license to do anything to make sure that
defend itself.
Those nasty Hutus will never return to power.
I see.
So those are, two major reasons.
Would it be too far to call them a proxy, almost like a Western proxy in the Great Lakes region? Or, because I often think of that, when you have somebody with such a resume, looking away or ignoring them, that's an active choice. So I often wonder, is it because many of the human rights abuses Rwanda is doing, they're not just doing it for themselves, like you say, they're doing it for other partners. And yes, you wouldn't exactly be telling on your partners if I think about it. So
yes, Rwanda is a proxy. It's a Western ally. It is an ally to the United States of America, to the United Kingdom. It is the friend of those countries.
Strong friends.
In international arenas, those countries, when Rwanda is, when other countries like Congo complain about its activities in Central Africa, those countries turn a blind eye to the killings Rwanda commits in other African countries. The crimes committed by Rwanda have been documented. Even the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda documented the crimes committed by the Rwandan Patriotic Front. However, when Cara del Ponte tried, Cara del Ponte was the prosecutor at the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda. When she dared to say that she was going to issue arrest warrants against the members of the Rwandan Patriotic Front, she was removed from her position.
And they brought somebody else in.
Yes. Remember the US State Department, through a person called Ambassador Prosper, intervened. And Cara del Ponte, the case of Rwanda was taken over by an African who was willing to defend the interests of Western countries and the interests of Rwanda. And those individuals who committed crimes, they are free. So it is it is sad.
Yeah, it's a large culture of impunity and injustice. And it seems like it, yeah.
I mentioned the United Kingdom and the United States. I also forgot to mention France.
Yes.
France has, obstructed any investigation regarding the downing of the plane carrying the president of Rwanda on April 6, 1994. So the interests of those countries are more important than the lives of the Rwandan people. And that's what Rwandans should understand. Those countries will never do much in terms of getting rid of the dictatorial regime of the Rwandan Patriotic Front led by the RPF.
Yeah,
it is Rwandans' responsibility to engineer a revolution.
Yes, yes.
That will bring about democracy, peace, and ethnic coexistence in Rwanda.
That's a great point, and it'll take us to our last topic, which is military coups and political change in Africa. You mentioned a word lobbyists, and I think I would really love to study the lobbying of Rwanda in the last 10 or 20 years or so, because when you speak to people, they are not aware that Rwanda is a military dictatorship, because the lobbying has created such a beautiful image of civil society. And so it's very interesting, but it's well known that, military groups have a history in Africa, and they have not been, the allies of democracies. But over the last few months, we saw in Northern Africa, in the Sahel, and in Western Africa, and in Gabon, if you want to count that one, we've been seeing some Pan-Africans and population. They hail these military coups as a possible change of power from, the elected civil power that often feels like a junta military ruled state. So my first question is, what do you think the meaning of all these coups are, these new waves of coups? And should we agree that they can bring a positive change to the country? While the previous, like, for example, I know Habyarimana came in with a coup. So how can we take any positive change from this while remembering that they can sometimes pretend to be replacing corrupt regimes while they're also corrupt? So it's quite a loaded question.
Okay. Yeah. During the Cold War, the military coups were really related to the power struggle between the Soviet Union and the United States and Western countries. So when there was a president, particularly the president born out of the struggle for independence, when those presidents indicated leanings towards the East, by East I mean the Soviet Union, they were immediately removed from power by military coups. Why? The military coups were the legacies of colonialism. The military was the organized, was the structure which was the best organized and the best suited to take over.
Transition, yeah.
Yes. Nowadays, what do we see? We in Africa, we have now captains and colonels who are taking power. In other words, they're coming from a new generation of people. It's not the generals. No,
that's a good point.
It's colonels. It is captains. Maybe in Gabon, it was a general, but in other places, it is. And those captains and colonels seem to be articulating the desire of people, the desire for change. In fact, the desire for a revolution. Why? Because the civilian regimes did not deliver services to their people. They did not. So you see young people taking to the streets when there is a military coup led by a colonel or a captain. And when you listen to the statements made by those captains and the colonels, junior officers, you are under the impression that they really have political convictions, of introducing real change that people want. So that's why I think this is a new phenomenon. Otherwise, we do have Rwanda is led by a general. Paul Kagame is a general.
Yes.
Museveni is a general. Huh?
With their leaders being generals, then do you think this strategy can benefit Rwanda? Like, would it be beneficial with regard to removing Kagame? Because if he's a general, how can a captain? But again, he's also even said that in a military dictatorship, you cannot have coups. But again, those other countries in the Sahel, they also thought of themselves as military dictatorships. But I do not see the young members of RPF's military capable of making a political coup. And I think maybe, is it because we don't have any civil society that can buffer any coup change? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, because it often feels impossible for Rwandans to be able to accomplish this.
Maybe we should look at the composition of the army and the organizational structure of the Rwandan army. I do believe that the Rwandan army is not multi-ethnic. It is its leadership is made up of people from one ethnic group. I'm not saying that ethnic group is in power, but I'm saying that you have a tiny group that controls the army. And that tiny group comes from one ethnic group. It's like during the monarchy, we had a king. And below him, we had some Tutsi lineages.
Nobility, yes.
But not all Tutsi had power. And that's what I think is going on in Rwanda. Now, that tiny group that is controlling Rwanda today, I don't think it is going to create a deep hole for itself. No.
Yes, that makes sense.
I think it's going to, in order to perpetuate itself. It's going to stick or to stay close and to make sure it continues to rule Rwanda until some kind of other force removes it from power.
I see.
Of course, I do not wish a military takeover in Rwanda. Yes. What I wish is the emergence of a grassroots movement that would topple the current regime, because that way it is possible to bring about democracy. And to have a grassroots movement, you need a civil society. How do you create a civil society that is free from the control of the Rwandan Patriotic Front?
Yes, because they will always try.
Yeah, I think it is possible. We do have the technology to be able to communicate. If there are people who are really determined to bring about change in Rwanda, the technology exists, the internet exists. It is possible to create an underground movement. It is possible, but you have to have people who are willing to do it. And also you need people inside Rwanda who believe in the possibility of a social change, a political social change, a political change in Rwanda.
Thank you for that. I do have a follow-up question. The way you describe the composition of the military and, how that makes it difficult for a coup made so much sense to me. A question, though, I do have: if their control is that tight, can a country like Rwanda ever rely on the ballot? Can we ever rely on democracy through voting? And then I do remember we spoke about Mr. Twagiramungu at the start of this talk. So I was just wondering if you could clarify that. Do you believe democracy through voting or through the ballot is possible within a military dictatorship?
The ballot in current Rwanda is just impossible. Why? Because the ruling party, the Rwandan Patriotic Front, will never allow you to use the democratic tools to run for office. What are those democratic tools? First, you need to be able to have a free public space, what some people call the public sphere. You need to be able to talk to people. You have to launch a political party. You have to have free media. You have to have the freedom of assembly.
Wow.
That is impossible in Rwanda. Twagiramungu tried, Victoire Ingabire has tried, and she's still trying. Diane Rwigara tried. There is I think I forget another gentleman who tried. There is Ntaganda who is there, who is in Rwanda, who is unable to even move around his house You see?
Wow.
So the ballot in Rwanda, it is a staged event that allows the RPF to tell its lobbyists and those multinational corporations, it allows, the ballot allows them to tell them that, well, things are good here. There is democracy.
Yes.
Now, something also is missing in what we have said. That is, in Western countries, there is no uproar about what is going on in Rwanda.
Yes.
In other words, in Canada or the United States or Western Europe, the politicians do not feel the need to pay attention to what is going on in Rwanda. Why? Because there is no constituencies that put pressure on them to do something about Rwanda.
I see.
That is very important. Look,
that is something.
Example.
I was going to say that is such an important point, because I find that the diaspora, that would be our job, we tend to have, we take a step back from politics in the West, believing that we have no ability to change. But the way you say, we could be those constituents putting the pressure on them. So I thought that's such an amazing point. Sorry about cutting you off.
Yes. So those Rwandans who live in Canada, in America, in Australia, in Western Europe, and the UK, they are the ones who should tell their, political representatives that giving money to Rwanda is really hurting Rwandan citizens. It is helping Kagame and his cronies to stay in power forever. So who can best articulate that? The Rwandans those who live in the diaspora. I'm not talking about this diaspora we see in Rwandan media. That's to me, I am really amazed when I see such people who live in Western countries who understand the Western political culture and who decides to express support to a racist government in Rwanda. After all, the Rwandan government is a racist government.
It really is.
Its ideological foundation is the genocide. The genocide against Tutsi. However, if you go back to October 1st, 1990, the RPF, when it invaded, at first it was pushed back to Uganda, then it started guerrilla warfare in 1990, 1991. I know people from my village, civilians who were killed. I know, I have information about people who were shot or killed with knives at night. So as the RPF was moving towards the Kigali to capture to capture power, what it did was killing everything in its path to power.
Wow.
So what do you call that? Huh? In Kibeo or Jumba or Kanama in Congo, the RPF killed Hutus.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, I do not have legal training, but I do think that those crimes, if investigated, they might constitute a genocide against the Hutu.
Mm-hmm.
So the regime is a racist regime. And those people who express themselves as the members of the diaspora, they are supporting an apartheid regime in Rwanda, and they should be ashamed of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion.
Really?
That's my opinion.
It never makes sense. It never makes sense to me, because you why leave then? Why come to the West if you were living in the perfect country? And also, what is very interesting is because we all live in the West and we've been exposed to many of the freedoms we were speaking about, they understand fully what is happening. So it's not even like they're bystanders watching in apartheid. If anything, they are also players within the apartheid states. And so it is.
They are accomplices.
Perfect word.
Yeah.
And it's becoming intolerable. I think it's starting to become intolerable because you cannot follow refugees who fled you to continue this behavior. So Dr. Higiro, those were all the questions I had for you. If you have anything you'd like to a final word to end with before we end our live stream today. It was very great speaking with you. I learned quite a lot. I often really love speaking with people who lived in Rwanda previously. They often add context and just things that many of us who know nothing about Rwanda can't see. So thank you very much for your time today. And if you have anything you'd like to add, please do.
Well, the Rwandan Patriotic Front and Paul Kagame have put out a narrative about Rwanda, according to which somehow Rwanda did not exist before 1994. And they added to it that conflicts opposing Hutu to Tutsi started in 1954, and that under the monarchy there was social harmony. I would like to encourage the younger generation of Rwandans, particularly those born after 1994, or even those who were not teenagers in 1994, to do their own research. I do know that they go through indoctrination camps where they are coerced. They have to attend them. But they should be skeptical. They should be curious and challenge what they get from Rwandan officials who repeat the narrative I mentioned, the official narrative. It is through a discussion like the one I I'm having with you, that they may learn about a different way of looking at political developments in Rwanda. We have social media. I do know that not everything that is covered by social media is useful, but there is information they may get. There are books that challenge the official narrative of Rwandan history. The books that challenge what they learn about during indoctrination sessions. And they should be curious and try to find out those books, or try to listen to people they trust. Because the first thing on the first step to do towards a revolution in Rwanda, the first step towards social change, is awareness. Because one has to be able to realize that things are not going well.
Well, they can change them.
What is being told is has nothing to do with what happened in the past. So the young generation should challenge those what they get from those indoctrination sessions. And I urge them to listen to discussions that try to challenge what is spread around by RPF propaganda. And thank you for having me.
No, thank you very much for all your wisdom and sharing your sharing your thoughts with us. And I want to thank everyone who was with us today live with TV Radio in Pinduka. My name is Sasa Kayinde, and today I was speaking with Dr. Jean-Marie Vianney Higiro. He is a professor of communications at the Western New England University. Thank you very much for your time today, Doctor, and we'll see each other again.
Thank you.